We'll get started. So my name is Z Kessler. I'm the Marketing and Education Manager for Thunder Laser Canada. And today we are hosting our friend of Thunder and friend of Fuse 33 Makerspace, Casey. The topic is how to laser cut gingerbread. And Casey has a very elaborate presentation walking through all the steps, which you'll all have access to download if you want to look at all the ingredients you'll need and all the steps in the process. And so you'll have all of it afterwards. We'll also add this video to YouTube. So without further ado, Casey, take it away.
Hey, thank you. And just want to confirm that you can see the screen here in the presentation.
I can see.
Just making sure. So I think Z, this part's you, so I'll let you flip through and let me know when to change slides.
Good. So some people might be new to laser cutting and perhaps just somewhat familiar. I think some people on this webinar also are already our customers, so they already know. But I thought I would go through what a laser cutter is. A lot of people kind of think of it like a 3D printer, but it sort of has some similarities in the sense that it has an XY axis. So the way it moves is very similar, except for instead of building up layers one by one, you are cutting into or engraving into a surface. So it's used primarily by designers, engineers, artists to rapid prototype or to create finished products in 2D and in 3D. So I'll show you some examples of that. If you use CAD software, or you can use a lot of different softwares, as long as it has vector output, you can save as a vector, you can bring it into the laser software. You don't have to use the laser software to do the designing. A lot of people ask that question. And then basically you decide in the laser software what's going to be what speed and what power, and then what part is going to be engraved and which part will be cut. So that is just sort of a basic overview. If you want to go to the next slide, Casey. This is besides gingerbread, which is not a common thing for people to laser cut, but a fun thing. These are sort of the common projects that people work on. So you can cut and engrave different woods, hardwoods, softwoods, plywoods, MDF. Those are pretty popular. Acrylics, PETG, PLA, lamicoids, which is like a 2-layer plastic, different fabrics like leather and leatherette, bamboo, rayon, velvet, a whole bunch of different ones. And they all have very different properties when you engrave them. Some of them turn white, other ones turn dark. So it's pretty neat to experiment with that. You can also cut foam. I know a lot of people will use like rigid insulation foam to make signs because it's a little bit cheaper than wood sometimes. So I've seen a few projects like that. With our lasers, you can't cut into the glass or stone, but you can engrave into it, which is quite cool. And you can engrave onto metal surfaces. One of our lasers, the Aurora, it's possible to engrave in different colors too. So that's really neat. In terms of the limitations of what it can't engrave or cut, anything that has like a toxic off gas, so like vinyl is a no-no, a few different things like carbon fibers. The best thing that you can do if you're curious is to ask your supplier about a materials information sheet, or it's called materials data safety sheet, and they'll usually be able to provide that from the manufacturer. And that is a general overview. Also in here, there's a link to the right if you download this presentation after, where you can see what the settings would be for different materials that I've listed here. So you can see, oh, should I get, the Bolt versus the Nova, because they all have different abilities in terms of how long it will take to engrave or cut something. So that's a pretty good guide for people that might not be familiar. These are some projects here done by our ambassadors. Yeah, if you want to go to the next one there, Casey. One of the really cool things is that you can also organize your shop. You can design custom organizational just shelves and different things. This is for paints for one of our ambassadors that does miniature models. You can make 3-dimensional furniture, which is really neat with the little doggy down there in the corner. That is done by taking a 3D printer program that would do the slicing to tell the 3D printer how many layers, but instead you can actually send them to the laser and you can create a three-dimensional object. There's some earrings down there in the middle, public art installations with that one that looks like flames on the right, signs, Christmas ornaments. The picture of the man with the toque is on a lamicoid, so it's like the two-color plastic and it reveals the color underneath, so it's black surface and white underneath. And then the one that says mini teepee is suede, and then in the bottom right, that's engraving on stainless steel, I believe. If you can go to the next slide. These are some cool projects. I know that I don't know how many people here are teachers or work in education, but one of the ways we see a lot of schools using a laser cutter is to build different models in robotics. And it's really quite cool because it takes something that you design in your mind and makes it into this 3D thing that can actually work and has a function. And we have one of the artists at the Makerspace that does a lot of really cool projects like this. And I think that it really opens people's minds of what's possible in terms of like designing something and seeing it come to life so quickly. That's one of the benefits of a laser cutter, I believe. Next slide.
I guess
And
that's me.
well, let's see.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good segue because, you're just talking about like, being able to see what's all possible, but like, or I guess like what really are the limits for what you can make with the Thunder Laser. And I think before Z, you and I connected, I'm not sure if you were really thinking about lasering onto food. I know there was a few like short little experiments done with like engraving onto like macaron cookies and stuff, but I definitely didn't think you were really thinking seriously about making a very detailed piece or sculpture from gingerbread or anything. And so yeah, let's talk about laser gingerbread and probably what got a couple of you at least into this webinar. So I like to say, let's break some rules. Whenever I'm on my media releases for like CBC News or with the radio stations, I always like to say, oh yeah, I like to break some rules of like food art. But then I started thinking, wait, are there any rules that that say you can't do this? What can't you do with a thunder laser? And if it's not illegal, it's allowed, right? And what would Dr. Malcolm say? Well, Dr. Malcolm says your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think they should. And this is how I felt. I could hear this voice in my head like every 6 hours while working on my laser engraved, laser cut gingerbread because most of the time it was not working the way I wanted to. But that being said, I have some good news is that this led to a lot of iteration and a lot of recipe edits and changes, which now it's possible. Now we actually have a way to make this happen. So, hi, my name's Casey, and as an artist, I have a very bad self control, and I barely ever ask whether I should or not. And Thunder Laser makes that into a reality, which is wonderful. So, a bit about me. As I said, I'm a Calgary-based perishable edible artist. I make people eat their own face on live camera. And as you see there on the right, there's Lauren McGinnis from CBC News. And I've had Lauren McGinnis eat his own face on camera. And if you're curious about all this, I can tell you all about it later. But that's on my Instagram, and you can message me there. But at the core of my art is a statement. And at my various exhibitions and the 15 Gallery downtown Calgary, or the Lightbox, or Theatre Calgary, or Vertical Theatre, I always say everything is perishable. Nothing lasts forever. Or in other words, I like to say, especially when I'm teaching kids and doing, sessions for the Calgary Girl Guides, I like to say, life is short. Let's make it sweet. Or in other words, you can say YOLO. In the last 18 months, my edible art has been featured on the Drumheller Mail, Travel Drumheller, CBC Calgary. I've been actually featured on CBC twice now, 3 times, twice for the gingerbread. And I've had exhibitions with Arts Commons, Theatre Calgary, Vertigo Theatre, collaborated with Fuse 33, Alcove, the City of Calgary, Girl Guides, and the International Avenue Arts and Culture, been featured on various other places like Airdrie's networks, especially when I was making their public library into a architectural gingerbread house last year. And so, but now for the gingerbread. So this is a product and the project I worked on this year. I delivered it just this recent Saturday. I was on the news the recent Friday for it. As you see, this is down to the detail, as close as you can get for that, I guess, level of pixelization you can get. how close it is to the historical house of the founder of Drumheller, the town of Drumheller, the place that most people just know for dinosaurs. And although I love dinosaurs, I also love the town of Drumheller too. And this historical house, when I first looked at it years ago, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the perfect house for a gingerbread house. Like, I've made contemporary buildings. I've made buildings like the Calgary City Hall as well as the Airdrie Public Library. But when I saw this, I was like, this is the cutest building to make as a gingerbread. Look at all those bricks. Look at all those details. Look at all those windows. And look at that super intricate roof, which is definitely going to hurt me later when I'm trying to make it out of gingerbread. And so this is the project I was working on. And yeah, it looks beautiful. It's totally edible, except for that wooden base and the LED lights. It's completely edible. It's sugar glass. It's joined using English toffee. It's engraved onto gingerbread, and instead of icing, it's actually white chocolate. And we'll get into all the details on how that's made. So this is going to be a bit of nerdy stuff for the first half. The last half is more fun, I promise. But the step one is to design it. I mean, it depends on the building you're working on, and it really depends on how old that building is. In the case of the City Hall of Calgary, the one I did last year, there's plenty of blueprints and architectural sketches available online in like free database. Nothing like that exists for the Jesse Gouge Hound because the Jesse Gouge Hound also doesn't look at all like it did when it was first made. It's gone through so many renovations and changes since then that even the historical drawings of the floor plans are not even close to how the exteriors of the buildings look anymore. It's gone through so much change. But I guess the front facade is still the same as you see in the bottom left sepia picture. So I was able to use that for my ratios and everything. And generally put, I had to work off of a bunch of very low quality two-dimensional images. And the best tip I can give is imagine if this building was made out of paper and you were to cut all the corners, lay them out flat, how they look. And that's exactly what I did. So after getting all the images, I'm going to play a little video on the right there. You can see me adjusting that image, kind of getting rid of the warp and perspective and distortion, and kind of lining it up onto a two-dimensional image. And then with that, I was able to know exactly where the doors were, what the ratio for the windows were, what the ratio for the height of the floors were, and everything, because it's not totally even. And I did also want to get into and stress the fact that I use Adobe Illustrator. You can use almost any vector-based programming for Thunder Laser, which is wonderful. But one thing you would want to make sure you do is color code your vector lines. So in this case, I use green for cutting, pink for light engraving, and red for heavy engraving. So, for example, the cobblestone, I want it to be nice and dark and weathered looking because it just looks so cute that way. And you might have seen in the image earlier, I'll just flip back to it just so you can see it. The cobblestone on the bottom there in the front of the porch, nice and dark, looks like stone, totally edible, tastes a little bit charred, but tastes good, kind of like roasty, creme brulee like. The bricks are nice and light, gives good texture. So again, I use different color coding. So when you load it into Lightburn, you're able to isolate the different layers really easily if you have just a few colors that you color coded as different things. And moving on, step 2 is bake the secret gingerbread. I actually brought my recipe book. I have so many recipes in this book. Uh, these are these are the recipes I use for my edible portraiture and certain things like that. Being a food artist, have way too many recipes. But over the last while, I finally iterated on this recipe a few times and found one that works for the laser cutter. But you'll probably be likely to ask, why is it so difficult to just make a gingerbread and cut in a laser cutter? Well, most gingerbread recipes are pretty old, and they were not designed with lasers in mind. Probably if the original recipe makers from the 1800s saw these gingerbread go under a laser machine, they'll probably think you're a witch or something. Uh, I'm sure they'll call me a witch, but it was definitely not made with lasers in mind, and can lead to a variety of failures. For example, not cutting properly. This is a really common issue I've seen in other people who post about making laser cut gingerbread. It's very hard to cut traditional gingerbread on the laser. It's not tasty. For example, construction gingerbread often tastes totally terrible, or it just, I don't know, burns a lot on the laser cutter and just tastes really weird, or it creates too much smoke, or it's too uneven, too hard to make, too hard to bake, too hard to roll, and occasionally you get fire. So I do want to stress that if you do take on this experiment, and if you do, please tag me on Instagram because I'd love to check it out and give you some tips. Because I really don't want to be the only one doing this. It makes me look so weird being the only one making laser cut gingerbread. So please join on this. It's really fun. And but make sure, especially in your first like I'll say 50 times trying laser cut gingerbread, supervise it. It has caught fire before, and it seems to surprise me with it, even when I think it'll never happen. So again, the secret recipe here and why it works. Throughout all my iteration, I found that the lowest fat content possible and the lowest protein content possible, while still being, able to hold shape and roll easily, works best. So a high fat content makes it cut really slowly because fat works as an effective heat sink to the laser. And low protein content leads to less burning. I don't know what it is, but recipes that use lots of eggs, which add a lot of protein, they just catch fire. They just blacken. They just go horribly. And then uh, one thing you might notice in the recipe on the right there, feel free to take a picture and save it for later. It's no secret. But I do a cardinal sin in baking cookies. I'm sure a couple of you have already noticed if you're a baker in there, but I add water to my cookie recipe. Now, with cookies and gingerbread, you're supposed to never add water or milk. But I add water because due to the high sugar content and the high fat content from the vegetable shortening, even with the reduced shortening, um, it prevents the gluten from forming, so you don't have to worry about water being added. And if you don't add water, good luck rolling out that dough as thin as you need it because to make it cut properly on the laser, it needs to be very thin and very, very even. But that being said, you also want to use a low liquid sugar content. Don't use any corn syrup if you can help it, and try to use as little molasses as possible. You could probably actually just cut out all the molasses and use brown food coloring. I just wanted to taste like gingerbread, so I used the molasses. But the sugar content, liquid sugar, actually stays liquid even technically after it's hardened. And so when you start cutting, it'll actually start seeping out of the gingerbread. So that's why you want to minimize liquid sugar. And yeah, again, this is a soft dough, mainly because of that water addition. And you want to bake not that hot, 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 to 40 minutes, just long enough and just hot enough for the white sugar to convert into caramel sugar. So I'll show you a few quick little videos of me making it so you can see I'm making huge batches using whole bags of sugar at a time, whole containers of molasses at a time. I'm mixing it. As you see, there's a little one egg yolk in there flying around. You don't want to use too much, but the egg yolk does help. One egg does help make it come together. And then if you did it right and you add the flour gradually until you get this, kind of fluffy dough texture, which doesn't look at all like gingerbread dough. Like gingerbread dough is usually like tough and dense and dark. You'll get this nice and frothy dough, which doesn't look like gingerbread at all, but let me tell you, it tastes amazing when you bake it. And also, this is really important because the next step is use guided rollers. You'll find these in restaurant supply stores or even craft stores like Michael's, but they'll come with these rings and you attach them to rollers so you can get very, very even rolling. This will save you so much time, and I use this for not just gingerbread. If you don't own one and you're a serious baker, home baker, just get one. It'll save you so much time. And with that, you're able to roll these perfectly even sheets of gingerbread, mainly because of the water addition. If you roll it properly, it'll have the surface of the planet Saturn, which is absolutely beautiful. I've had people tell me it looks like wood, kind of like veneer, which I wish it stayed that way. Unfortunately, it doesn't, because after you bake it, it just kind of turns into a sheet of gingerbread, which I mean, for the purpose of what we're doing, it's good. And then, if you baked it properly, it'll be nice and brittle and nice and structurally sound. It won't bend, it won't crack, it'll hold its shape. And as you see there, just in the right video, I put a little cooling rack in the blender laser cutting bed. I'll tell you a bit about that later. So now let's shoot this gingerbread, right? So when you laser blast your gingerbread, this is the hardest part. Things to keep in mind. Gingerbread is harder to cut than most traditional materials. If the material gets too hot, it becomes soft. So for example, imagine like cutting a big valley or a canyon. If you cut too hot, the tops of those valleys, the ridges of it will actually fold in and close and seal. So you want to make sure it doesn't get too hot. You want to cut small grooves at a time and have those built. So use a very high speed, much higher than you would think, and many passes, so it has a chance to cool between layers. So again, mounted food safe stainless steel cooling rack on the Thunder laser cutting bed. This is also because I'm a food artist. I make projects for companies and for clients. But not just that. If you don't use something to separate it from the Thunder laser cutting bed, when you cut it, sometimes a bit of that melted sugar or molasses or whatever else might seep out and stick to your laser cutter cutting bed, and that's a pain to clean because the only thing that takes off is water, and you don't really want to be spraying water into a thunder laser cutting bed. So please use a cooling rack. Just buy a stainless steel one from a local grocer. I just got mine from Superstore, I think. And yeah, lay that gingerbread cookie sheet directly on top of the cooling rack. And I use the Nova 51. You can use the fiber laser as well, the small thermal. It just takes a little bit more layers to cut it. But set the distance to about 5 millimeters. I found that to be my optimal. Used 80 millimeter speed, 90 max power, 4 to 8 passes. Turn on the air so it has a chance to cool. If you try this recipe, you'll notice that it actually cuts closer to 2 to 3 passes. I just wrote 4 to 8 because here I have an example. If you see my camera, I make some super detailed, delicate stuff like this velociraptor skeleton. And if you see my fingertips there, you can see how small and tiny and detailed that is, right? When you're cutting really, really delicate stuff like this, you want to make sure you're using extra passes to ensure that cut follows through. Because if it doesn't, good luck getting those little pieces out without shattering the whole thing. So again, I just wrote 4 to 8. Experiment with lower if you want, and experiment with higher speed as well if you feel like it. But that is the setting to put on screen because that setting will ensure a cut. I want to give you a setting that will like 100% ensure a cut, just in case you run into that issue. For engraving, again, on the Nova 51, I set the laser distance to 15 millimeters. I used 500 millimeters of second speed, 30 max power, 1 pass, and I turn off the air so there's a chance to get hot. And if you did this right, it should look something like this. So as you see, the cut edges on the side are not charred or black at all. It's nice and like the same texture and color as like the top surface. And the engraving is, on the other hand, nice and dark, so you can see it from a distance. So that's your goal. And of course, if you want a darker engraving, you want to use a little bit of a lower speed, but that's about it. So again, some videos on cutting. So cobblestone, I use a lower speed there because I wanted to get nice and dark to get it weathered looking. For the bricks, I want to use nice and fast, so it just gives a nice texture without being too dark or dirty looking. I didn't want the building to look like it's gone through a fire. And lastly, for the cuts, you see there, if you have an eagle's eye, you'll notice the gingerbread kind of pop, right? Kind of slides down there. That is the money. You want to see and wait until it does a little drop, or else likely you're not going to be separated. Although a bit of work with the X-Acto knife might help you. And the results are absolutely stunning. I'm absolutely in love with the results. Here are some prototype results. As you see, this was the logo for the Tyrannosaurus Rex, which is the company that's currently managing the historical mayor's house, and you can actually go and stay there as a bed and breakfast. It's so luxurious. The silverware is 100% silver, and like you feel like an absolute coal mogul, and you're like on the living in like 1910s or something, and you're getting this amazing brunch every day, and oh, so good. And here is with edible sugar glass and some LED lights for the CBC radio. This I brought over last Friday. I made it rush the night before, so it was not the perfect, but man, does it look beautiful with that edible sugar glass, right? Speaking of which, we're going to talk about sugar glass. So that's the next step. So time to construct. Now you got all those pieces of gingerbread time cut and ready. It's time to test your 3D puzzle skills. If as a kid you receive one of those wood craft kits to make a little model of the Notre Dame and you never finished it, good luck, because this is harder. But also, this is a good point to see if you remembered your high school trigonometry, because the roof pieces are not going to be perfect. You're going to have to do a little bit of fiddling. But I'm probably making it harder than it sounds. It's actually really fun. You'll love it. And if you do it with kids, they'll love it too. So as you see, you have those pieces. Before you put them together, though, you want to make sure you add the sugar windows. If you don't want to do sugar windows, feel free to skip the step, but it just makes it look a lot better. The light scatters on it when it hits instead of just passing right through, so you get this glow effect. So you want to make theater glass, the same stuff they use in Hollywood, which is called sugar glass. made with isomalt sugar. You can just buy it on Amazon with a little bit of water added. It should come to 335 degrees Fahrenheit. And then you can store in your oven. Just find a YouTube video on how to make it. It's like such an established industry. But as you see here, got my bag of isomalt and a little bit of water coming to a boil there. And I'm simmering it. I'm going to bring it to 335 degrees Fahrenheit before taking off the heat. Once it's off the heat, it's this nice goopy honey-like texture, very hot. You'll spoon a bit of the melted sugar onto parchment paper, stick the gingerbread window frame directly over it, and it should harden in 30 seconds. Sometimes it'll break your heart, and that is healthy, I hear. At least that's what my therapist says. But as you see, the back side of this shows a little gloop and how it sticks to the back of that window. As you see, it doesn't have to be perfect. It does a pretty good job. And this is what I mean by breaking your heart. Sometimes your favorite pieces will crack and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to fix this. And the reality is you can't, so you have to eat it. You have to eat your mistakes. That's a lesson in edible art. It's delicious though. You'll like it. And this kind of comes to a point of make sure you cut a few extra pieces, especially if it's a delicate piece. You want to have a couple extra on hand. And you'll join the pieces together using melted sugar toffee. This is a 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 times better than the icing glue nonsense that you can get in like the superstore, big market grocery stores. It's what Big Gingerbread's trying to sell you so they can keep all the cool stuff to themselves. All the professional food artists and pastry chefs that make gingerbread use melted sugar toffee for a reason. It's so fast to work with. It is incredibly structurally sound, and you don't have to wait hours holding it together with books and rubber band or whatever. It comes together in like 5 to 30 seconds. But please, please wear gloves. Melted sugar is it's like hot oil. It's super hot. It'll burn you. But unlike hot oil, which you can wipe off or get rid of, it will stick to your hand. It will burn until it can burn no more. And it will remove layers of flesh if you're not careful. So please wear gloves. So if it does splash on your hand, you can rip the glove off so you can save your hand. But that being said, here it is. I am melting that toffee. I just use a very classic toffee recipe, just granulated sugar and a little bit of water. Avoid using fats or corn syrups. Some people do them. It can work, but it kind of makes it soft at the end. And then you want to dip the edges of the gingerbread cuts directly in the toffee and stick it on. And I wish I took a little bit of a longer video because just at the end of that video right there, it actually already hardens and I can just lift my hand off and it stays there, unlike, icing glue. And as you see, you can get it to come together very rapidly quick. And even for really delicate like sunrooms like this, you can put together and they just look absolutely wonderful. I reinforce this with extra toffee as you see in those corners because this one's such a delicate piece. Up to you if you want to do that. You can just kind of dollop a little bit with a spoon or a butter knife. And as you start putting it together, as you see, there's a piece of the portrait with a cobblestone. There's a porch together. I'm so proud of that one. And you can see the building coming together. It's absolutely wonderful. And then you want to stick some LED lights in there. Don't use candles. Don't use incandescent bulbs. Candles will burn the house. It doesn't matter if you have the chimney and good ventilation. It will catch fire. Take this warning. Use LEDs. They're cheap. They're reliable. I use the multicolored ones because they're awesome. I cut a food safe bottle and just wrapped it around with a little bit of hot glue. And then the result is like this. So before I add the roof on, I always test it because once you put the roof on, you can't move anything around anymore. Isn't that just beautiful? Look how it scatters on those windows, right? And lastly, you want to add the roof and add the finishing touches. For good riz, you want to melt white chocolate and candy melt for the white details. And you can use raw icing as well, but it's just simply more work. If you're a traditionalist, go ahead. But I use these candy melts. They melt super easily. And then you just put them in a Ziploc bag, cut the corner out, and pipe them on like you would. Don't worry about being perfect. I'm not being perfect here, and it looks good, and it kind of adds a nice little character to it. And lastly, show up on the news. So I don't think you'll be able to hear this on your end there, but here's me talking to Lauren McGinnis from CBC about some of the prototypes I made. with a Spinosaurus skeleton here, which Lauren thought was a T-Rex. And now even my mom knows I have a thing for dinosaurs, which I think she always knew. Um, but when it comes to doing this project, and the reason why I kind of want to encourage people on this webinar to consider doing this project, even if you're not a food artist, is you saw earlier, just in the last 18 months, how much media coverage I got. If you make some really cool food art using the knowledge you already have, because you've already used a laser before, and you already have probably access to it, whether it's through a makerspace or you own the machine, make a fun project around the winter. Make something for a local community, for some town, and you'll get so much good press. And they always want to know what else you're up to, what else you do, and they want to get you in stock in the local stores. So give this a try. It'll get you a lot of recognition, and man, is it really fun. So I packed it up in a nice little just cardboard box from Home Depot and brought to the final resting place where currently it's on view, and there's numerous open houses happening at the historical Jesse Gouge, founder's home of Drumheller. And apparently the kids are always reaching at it. So Sean from that company is always happy to bat people away. But but it is absolutely crazy. So much buzz. It lasts for years if you're a good steward of it. And yeah, like if you're Alberta based, if you're Drumheller based, gosh, go check it out. It is absolutely wonderful to check out in person. Pictures just don't do it justice. And yeah, thank you. And please feel free to check out my other work on Instagram on at paintingbay.com or painting.bay, not .com. I make people eat their own faces, and you'll find out all about that on my Instagram. Back to you, Z. Meet Z.
There's a question here from Gary saying, I was thinking of non-edible with salt dough. Have you tried it? Now you're muted.
Ah, nice. Now we're even. So on my earliest attempts trying to cut things on the Thunder Laser, you might have seen on my Instagram, I have a video of me just experimenting with a bunch of weird food materials. I've tried toast, I've tried cheese, I've tried ham. I'm not kidding. We actually ran a little campaign for April Fools with Thunder Laser last year for a laser toast
Laser
sandwich.
toast.
Um, so yes, you can use crackers, you can use salt dough, you can use many things for it. Keep in mind, if it's a high salt ratio, I don't really know what salt dough is, to be honest. If you use a really high salt ratio, you're going to be dealing with cutting salt as a material, which I'm not sure if Thunder Laser can, because salt has a really high burning point and melting point. I'd recommend try out with the easy to burn things first. Toast is a great place because we have all burnt toast. So try cutting toast on it and see if you can make some cool shape out of toast and see where that goes, and experiment with anything else. And let me know. Just send me a message. I want to know now.
Yeah, it's always been sort of a game at the makerspace to be like, what should we should we do it? Like bacon or like gyozas. I know you did like dumplings or gyozas.
Yeah,
And not
yeah,
everything works as good as others, but
yeah. I've definitely laser engraved dumplings in the past, and please, I can't really explain this. You have to just see it on Instagram. It's just wonderful. Um, Actually, I didn't take a video of the one that blew up. One started like steaming and like shooting material out because it got really hot on the inside. Yeah, if you're gonna engrave a dumpling, make sure there's a small pinprick hole on the side so it doesn't build pressure.
um yeah, if anyone else has any questions for Casey, I also you can ask here, but also if you think of it later, what's the most costly, biggest mistake and why it's okay to fail? That's from Reed.
For me,
Yeah,
what's the most costly, biggest mistake?
yeah.
Ooh, so honestly, I wonder if Shannon is. Oh, I see Shannon's on the call. Sorry in advance, Shannon. The most costly mistake was probably last year. Before we were, getting ready for me to do my second round of experimentation on the Thunder laser device using the Gingerbread. And I remember you had to call in tests from Thunder Laser to clean the whole bed because I didn't use that stainless steel cooling rack. You know how I warned you about using a cooling rack? I learned the hard way, so you don't have to use a cooling rack, or also like just build up so much melted goop all over your cutting bed and it ruins the device. So that's probably the most costliest. Luckily, I didn't have to pay it. I think Shannon did. So sorry, Shannon.
Uh, would you mind going to the next slide there? And anyone feel free to put some questions in the chat, even when we're moving on to the next thing. So I put some notes as well for people who are interested that might already have a laser or might be curious to get a laser. This is something that I think is really cool. We don't really need to watch it, but there is a video here that I pasted in for anyone that downloads the presentation. You can mass produce ornaments or other things, of course, but ornaments is timely for this time of year, by pulling names from a spreadsheet. So just say you have an order from a company and they have like 300 employees. You can just get a spreadsheet of their name from their CRM. Someone can download it and give it to you. And then you can pull that in through this thing called variable text, which is a feature in Lightburn. And then each ornament can be different, in the sense that the design will be the same, but then the name can be different on it. Or you can customize, like just say you have 4 different holiday sayings, you can make them all say different things, but you don't have to go in and design each time. So that's kind of a cool feature called variable text, if anyone wants to look into that hasn't tried it yet. I still haven't tried it, so I have this video on here for myself as well, but I have a feeling a lot of you might find that an interesting feature. And if you want to go to the next slide there, I thought that I would touch on gifts. So some of you probably already follow a bunch of different laser accounts. We have some great ambassadors that we feature in our stories on Instagram. So if you're ever sort of looking for other people, maybe you don't have a laser yet, but you're interested and you want to see what people use it for. This is one of the customers we have that are doing really well. They exclusively focus on local ornaments and signs. And so you can see here, obviously they're in Saskatchewan, and you have all these people that work for the grain elevator company. You can do something that's sort of locally relevant and like familiar to the people nearby that like nobody else has. It's like pretty unique. And then there's ones here for like different people in like the University of Regina. You could customize it for each student or like for the faculty. And then on the right here, you can go to their website. They're fantastic, Sticks and Doodles. They have like, I think 7 of our machines now. They have a lot, all different types now. And one of the things that I thought was kind of neat that they had on their website is, people go on like trips together as a family or as a date or like, and so having something that's kind of locally relevant, like a local national park or a local camping spot that people tend to go to on special vacations is kind of a cool ornament to put on the tree. So they have a few different things like that I thought were really cool. They also had, I didn't include it, but it was like a snowflake, but the snowflake looked like wheat. So it's kind of like a cute little regional ornament. I thought that was cool. And then if you want to move to the next slide there, this is something I also thought was cool. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with Gord. So he runs Laser Nug, the YouTube channel, and he has a bolt, which is one of our smaller lasers that's very high detail, and he documents about how to do different projects. And so this project I thought was neat because it sort of has like a frosty, like ice look. So you're engraving on clear acrylic, and there's lots of different little tricks to make it look like either very refined and like perfect, or you can make it look a little frosty and make it look like kind of like ice or something. And so I highly recommend, if you're looking for your first few projects, to check out Gord. And he also has the Aurora Light. He's doing some projects on there. So if anyone is thinking about getting our fiber laser, he has a bunch of projects that he's documented all the way from the beginning of like how to set up. I even find they're very useful. Of course, I have access to the Thunder Laser team, but we're always busy. So sometimes I just look at Gord stuff and I'm like, wow, this is really great. Like I didn't even need to ask for help from our team. So I highly recommend checking that out. And if you want to go to the next slide, I just thought for anyone that might have questions, I'm not sure how many people on here already have lasers versus are curious about lasers, but I thought one of our most common questions are, what is the maintenance like on a laser? What is the cost of maintenance on a laser? Like once you buy it, then what? So I've just taken a screenshot from one of our pages. If you could go to the next slide there. So basically when you buy the laser, there's only so many parts that you need to replace or you need to clean. And usually you only need to replace them if you're not taking care of them properly. But for example, the lens that's right above where you're shooting the laser, that tends to get a little bit dirty if you have a lot of smoke. And so that's something you want to clean quite often, and it will prevent it from cracking. And then your lens can last like many years. But sometimes when people are first learning, they might put the air like on the wrong setting, and then they end up getting like, you know, some smoke on the mirror and it might crack it. But if you clean it as much as possible and you learn more about how to tune in your settings, watch some of these videos, they'll help you a lot. You won't necessarily have that problem. It's not like a frequent problem that people have unless they're not cleaning their mirrors, or sorry, their lenses. And the lenses are, I think about, I want to say like less than $100 for the Nova and a little bit more for the Bolt because it's sort of like a bigger piece. But and then the mirrors where the laser bounces off, they need to be cleaned pretty often, but they don't tend to break very frequently. That's not something that we see a lot of people requesting. The beam combiner, that which is basically the hole in the back of the laser that comes from the back part into the bed, that needs to be cleaned just to make sure that the path is clear. The honeycomb itself, that's something that it's you can do that like maybe every 6 months or a year, or it just depends on honestly how much you use it and what you're using it for. Like some people do it weekly, some people, like, it just depends. If you're doing something really stinky and like maybe, I don't know, putting a gingerbread straight on it, yeah, you're probably gonna wash it more.
Yeah, don't put a gingerbread straight on it, please.
Yeah, exactly. So I've had mine for like, I don't know, maybe 8 months or something like that. And I haven't had to clean the honeycomb, but you will notice after a while that it smells a little bit like burning, you know, so you're like, that's not a nice smell. So you'll probably want to wash it, and you can use like a oven cleaner to do it. Some people use like an oven cleaner, or you can just put it in your bathtub. And it depends on how big your which laser you buy, of course, because some of them are better to just do it outside. Other people can just stick, like if I have a Bolt, I can put it in the bathtub and just soak it in there. Yeah, you want to lubricate the rails. You know, some of these projects are sort of some of these maintenance things. It really depends on how often you use it. So if you have a full-on manufacturing every single day, you're going to do it more often. If you're someone that just uses it, you know, a few times a week or on the weekend, you're obviously going to be able to get away with not doing it as often. But the coolest part about these lasers compared to other brands of lasers is that the way it's designed, all the sides open up, the back opens up. It's very easy to get to the part. So just say you do have to replace a part or clean it, it's easy to get to, and you don't have to have like a technician do it. Like I am not by any means the support person or the technical person on the team. I'm more of the creative type. So I've had to replace something, and I was surprised at how easy it was. And that's something that some other laser brands, there's not as much attention to detail put into the way that it's designed, with the way the doors open up and everything's so accessible and easy. So I just thought I would mention that. We also use off-the-shelf parts, meaning like some people will buy their parts from us, some people will buy them from other companies. You can buy them online. Lots of other laser brands use some of the same parts, so we're not like proprietary. So I think a lot of makers really enjoy that. And yeah, clean your air filter. That's that's one of those things that's a good one to remember, especially if you have like a fume extractor. You'll have to clean that every so often. I put a link in here about preventative maintenance that has a little bit more detail than this, but for anyone that is interested, you can download this afterwards. Take a look at the link. Do you want to go to the next slide? So this is sort of some of the other things that why people choose to come to us. So I know with some companies, there's like a chat bot and you might not get through to someone right away, or, they put you through some hoops before they'll actually talk to you. That's not how we do things. You'll talk to one of our staff. We have like 5 people on our team, and you're going to get to know them. You'll know who they are. You'll talk to them, and you'll be able to ask them questions. I know Shannon often gives his phone number out to people. We have support by email, and then we also have all of our Facebook groups as well. And we also have someone that is overnight that works in, like, they're working somewhere else, so we're able to answer all times of day, which is great. A lot of people ask us about the machines and the cost. And I know a lot of people, especially when they're first learning about lasers, they look at the different lasers and they don't really know exactly how to compare them. So a lot of lasers that you'll find that are, less expensive are not meant for manufacturing. They're meant for hobbies. So I think that's a question you have to ask yourself, is maybe it starts off as a hobby, but are you planning to run a business? Because if you are, it sometimes makes sense to just jump straight to the higher quality machine, which would be ours. And ours are one of the highest quality machines that are like in the lower price range. Like, so a lot of people find like they can pay off their machine, and like one customer paid it off in 3 months running a side business selling tumblers. We have another customer that paid it off in 6 months. Another customer paid off a year. So it's quite doable to pay it off quickly. We also have financing as well, if people are concerned about that. We stock much of the parts in Canada, the ones that you frequently might need to replace, like the lenses and things like that. We stock them all. We ship them from Calgary. And so that's easy. It means it comes quicker. For you, don't have to wait for something coming through the border, which is sometimes the case with other companies. Shannon's been to the factory, and actually I'm going to go there soon. I'm excited. And they test the tubes for like 48 hours before they ship them. So they have quite a rigorous process for ensuring that the machines are high quality and everything's working. And it's really simple to set it up. Like, it's really more the software than the actual laser. Good question, Brian. Do you sell materials? Yes, we are starting to sell materials. Like, we are just literally in the process of setting up our shop. In the shop right now, we have some of the parts. It's like a Shopify shop, so people can just directly order them, but we're just about to add MDF and different types of wood, and then some lamicoids and leatherettes. So we'll be sending an email out shortly once those are launched. We just have to figure out the shipping. And obviously the Canada Post strike right now is it makes it a little bit more difficult, but we're almost like right there, almost about to launch that part of it. But the shop is there. So if you were like, hey, I need a replacement lens, Tess can send you the link to it. We're sort of in the soft launch of our consumable shop right now. I guess there's a couple other notes here. Our online communities, like, obviously we aren't trying to be like, oh, we won't talk to you if you call us, like, just go online. But I do find that sometimes it's even faster to go into these Facebook groups. Like, there's so many of them for Thunder Laser users because we're all over the world, right? So there's Thunder Laser Thailand, Thunder Laser Germany, Thunder Laser, like, all over the place, like China, Thunder Laser, like Australia. And so sometimes if it's like 4 a.m. and you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to reach out to anyone right now, I'll go on the Facebook groups. There's like the global Thunder Laser users. There's a group for specific machines. And often there's someone awake who will answer you, and they're very kind and very knowledgeable. And I found those groups amazing. I did a survey because I wanted to see like how well the group's doing. And they like basically 67% of the community found the help they were looking for 90 to 100% of the time. 15% found the help they needed 80 to 90% of the time, and 8% found what they were looking for just searching the existing posts. So it's a really good community of like laser nerds that know a lot and are very willing to pass on their knowledge. And it's really, I found it even really helpful, even though I work here and can get access to help anytime I want. I think the last thing to point out that I think makes us unique compared to other laser companies is that we come by this very honestly. We did not set out to sell lasers. Like Shannon, if you've chatted with him, if you know him, he is someone known for really supporting makers and artists and small businesses in Calgary. And he runs, he's a co-founder of a makerspace called Fuse 33, which is how we met Casey. And basically it's a space where you can go and become a member and use the tools. And over the years, Shannon used a lot of different lasers. And one of the ones that he liked the most was the Thunder. And then during the pandemic, people were like, oh, maybe I want to start a business. Can I buy a Thunder too? And it just sort of evolved into a company. So it wasn't really like we planned it, but we did find that they were the safest, the easiest to use, the easiest to replace the parts, like the most reliable, like which really matters when you have a bunch of random people that are just learning how to use a machine, playing with it. So that is the reason we got into this, which so we really know our maker projects. Like we've seen people use these machines for like crazy stuff like Casey's doing, like not your typical projects, all the way to like, you know, the stuff that you typically see, which is like the signs and swag and things like that. Oh, thanks, Gord. Gord said, a big benefit for me is that every individual at Thunder Laser Canada is interested and invested in helping me and getting me what I need. Cheers and thanks. Yeah, thanks, Gord. Yeah, it's always great because for us, I think that a lot of the people that are our customers are kind of like people we would get along with in your everyday life because they're all very curious. They're all like makery people that are exploring, and you know, these are the type of people that become members of the makerspace. These are the type of people that end up being our customers, and it's very easy to relate to them and very fun to work with them because we feel the same way. We're really excited about what we do and we really like the product. It's not just like something we do for work, it's something we all have our own and we all enjoy doing it. So we have 10 minutes left, but happy to pop off early if there's no more questions, but feel free if anyone has any questions to write in the chat there. And do you want to maybe go to the next slide? I think that there's, so this is, if you go to our website and you can type in Buttercup Co. in the blog, you'll see Danielle's story. So Danielle is one of our very, very first customers. And like, I want to say 3.5 years ago or so. And she's a full-time chiropractor, and on the side, her and her mom started a business selling tumblers, custom tumblers. And yeah, she paid it off in 3 months, like never having used a laser before. So that's just one of the really cool success stories that we feel lucky to be able to share. And then if you want to go to the next slide there. Sticks and Doodles were also, actually, they were one of our customers before we even started doing it. They actually bought it from the factory and then we met them because it was right before we started selling the lasers. And yeah, like I said, they have 7 of our lasers at this point. And I think they have like definitely over 10 staff. I want to say 14 staff. Like they're doing really well, and they're Canadian in Saskatchewan. And it's been really cool seeing them grow and become like big company that's basically like hiring so many people and supporting local schools, doing internships with the students, all sorts of neat things. No issue that the laser burning into my food. Is there anything you do to the laser to prep before the food products? Casey? Like
In
just like
terms of
clean up
prepping the laser, in terms of prepping the laser itself, there's not much to do. Like you want to make sure things are clean, because obviously, if like I'm based out of the makerspace here in Calgary, so like I don't have my own device, but especially if it's a device where someone earlier was cutting acrylic or something that very not edible, you want to make sure you're cleaning a little bit just so it doesn't get on your food, because when the air turns on, things move around. And besides that, like really it's all about just making a cookie that cuts well with a laser. Once you have a cookie that cuts with a laser, the rest of the work is just treating it like wood, basically treating it like wood that cuts really weirdly. You don't really have to do much to it, so it's really just plug and play. And especially if you're just experimenting, you're not planning to eat it off the machine. Just don't worry too much, just put it on the cooling rack, stick that in the laser, and give it a few cuts and see how it goes.
Yeah, I would guess if you're planning on eating it, maybe cleaning out the air tube or something, just so not like in case something's inside. Oh yeah, I don't know if you're already on here. Casey's done all sorts of fun food stuff like dumplings and
Yeah.
all sorts. I put a link to Casey's Instagram if you want to check it out, Gord, because I think you'd enjoy it.
Just
And if
for
you
a
want to
little
go
bit
to
of
the next
context,
slide.
yeah, I make like fully edible portraits and stuff. I paint using like coffee, edible flowers, and fruits and stuff like that onto these like portraits by hand. I make people eat their own faces. So you'll see that's on my Instagram, but also obviously with the laser. I've toasted a sandwich using a laser. I've grilled a bit of ham using a laser. I've charred a bit of cheese using a laser. I've made a dumpling or two blow up using a laser, which I learned to not do again. And yeah, obviously a lot of gingerbread too.
Awesome. And then let's see. Is there one more slide? Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I have an article I wrote for people curious about designing in other programs and then bringing it into Lightburn, which is the program we recommend using with the laser. Our lasers come with a program called RDWorks, which is like the one for the laser controller, which works just fine. But I think the thing is, a lot of people tend to really like Lightburn because you can do a lot with it. And it's kind of an industry standard thing, like a lot of different brands of lasers, the ones that aren't proprietary, that is. A lot of people in the laser world use Lightburn, so it's easier when you go on the forums and everything to get help because there's a lot of support for it. And it's not that hard to learn, to be honest. I wasn't familiar with it before I worked here, but I was able to kind of learn pretty quickly. And yeah, if you want to go to the next slide, do I have one more? Oh yeah, that's just it. So yeah, I guess that's it for today. But thank you everybody for joining. I'm curious to see if anyone attempts this. Feel free to tag painting.bay, BAE, and of course Thunder Laser Canada if you decide to do an experiment, and we'll share it. And if you need some ideas or like some tips, we could probably chime in and be like, try this. But yeah, thanks so much for coming, and I'm really glad that people signed up and are curious about this. I think it's a pretty fun project, and yeah, next month is we're doing an event with Lynn's Digital Pyburn, and they are releasing some new rotaries. So we're going to talk about that. We have a tentative date, but it may change because I haven't heard back from them. But we're going to definitely do it at the end of January. So after you leave this webinar, you'll get an email saying thanks for coming, and then you'll get the invite to sign up for that. So feel free to sign up. And thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Casey. This is so much fun. It's been awesome watching the process and learning. And love putting the videos together too. It's been really great.
And yeah, please, if anyone on this webinar wants to experiment with some laser gingerbread or laser cut food, please reach out because I'd love to collaborate or just bounce ideas off of you. And I just want to be the not only person in Canada doing this. Please, someone else has got to join me. Like I look insane right now, so someone's got to join me here. Okay.
We've had a few ambassadors apply that are miniature makers, so maybe we can pair them up with you. That might be cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically making miniatures anyways. So yeah, that'd be great.
Exactly. Delicious miniatures. Okay, thank you everyone, and we'll post this on YouTube on Thunder Laser Canada's webinar playlist. So take care. Happy holidays.
Bye.
Bye.